everybody, for joining us again for another week's lecture at the Rising Tide Foundation's series on statecraft, really with the idea of reinfusing dignity and scientific meaning into that very abused word statecraft, which has been dragged through the mud, especially in recent years. The idea, of course, being that by looking at the greatest advances in human civilization at every part of the world, from ancient times to more modern times, we'll find examples of great thoughts, which when put into action, elevate the quality of natural law that animates economics, foreign policy, internal policy, and even cultural and scientific policy at different times for the good. And at other times when human action is out of alignment, the ideas animating our behavior or policies are out of alignment with that natural law, the opposite consequences naturally flow, of course, into situations of, we've seen the worst. We're pretty good at looking at the world through the filter of the present. So, I mean, looking at the past from the standpoint of empires, parasitical activity that thinks not of the future in favor of just, exploiting the present, is something which I think we're familiar with. But to really contrast those two different paradigms and really look at the past from a better appreciation to see those fights where human beings were better than their fate and broke from the tragic trajectories that they were on is very important. So that was sort of what animated so far our little symposium of several months of lectures. And now that we've begun our fifth movement, we are tackling something a little bit different and a little bit the same. The idea of looking at the past from the filter of the present is a problem, because sometimes people tend to think, and I encounter this a lot, I think we all do, that Russia and China and the United States all we're entering a sort of Cold War of sorts, that there's this tension, and that must have always been there. And that's a mistake, because when you actually look towards the drama of the past and you see how we were able to overcome great tragedies, great obstacles, we find the very opposite to be the case, and that at various moments the US and Russia had great friendship and brotherhood. At other times, the US and China had great friendship and brotherhood, which I think, especially in today's world of confusion and danger and turmoil, it's very important to be reminded of that friendship, because we have more in common than what separates us. So that was why I was very happy to encounter the writings of Professor Wang some years ago, when I was originally trying to compose some thoughts regarding the international dynamics of 1776 and the different influences from Russia, Catherine the Great, even stretching as far as the Mysore Rebellion in India, that were all engaged in a common outlook to create a new age of creative reason and cooperation in those times, 250 years ago. And I was curious, what was the influence of Chinese thought on the early founders of the United States? I didn't really know of any. So I began searching and reading. And when I stumbled across the essays that were published online by Professor Wang over the years, I was overjoyed. Obviously, China was having its own problems with the British Empire early on at the end of the 18th century, but there was an incredible synergy of thinking. So I was very happy when Professor Wang both asked me to review his new book, which will be published, I believe, in the coming weeks, entitled China and the Founding of the United States, the Influence of Traditional Chinese Civilization, published by Lexington Books. Professor Wang, you could correct me if it's already released, I'm not too sure. It'll be in the description box below this video, though. Professor Wang is the manager of the Hollis Library and adjunct professor at St. John's University. He's published over 20, I think by this time it's probably more, groundbreaking articles on the topic of Chinese influence on the founding fathers of America. And we're just very happy to have him on today. So Professor Wang, the stage is yours.
Okay, thank you so much. I'm so happy to be given the opportunity to talking friends about the influence of Chinese civilization on the founding of the United States. So I'm really appreciating you guys use your Sunday afternoon time come here to listen to my presentation. So I'll start with the PowerPoint. So You can see my point, right?
Nope.
You cannot see PowerPoint.
No, typically you have to click on share screen, the green button on the bottom
Oh,
of
let me
your
see.
Zoom box, your Zoom screen.
I go to where I go to share screen.
Yeah, hit share screen.
Where? Oh, here.
It's the
Share
green
screen.
button.
Oh, here.
Yes.
Okay. Now you can see, right? How about now?
Getting there? Yes. Yes, we see your PowerPoint.
Okay, beautiful.
And if you can make it full screen, yes, you know what to do.
Yeah, you can see now, right?
Great.
Okay. Okay, good. So I think make my presentation easier, and otherwise just talking about the little drier. Now it's like so I might talk about the a little bit about my research. List the main piece of my research, and I talk about China and the founding of the United States, the influence of traditional Chinese civilization. And when talking the founding of the United States, you got to you got to mention about the founding fathers, right? In 1973, historian Richard Morris identified 7 figures as key founders of the United States: John Adams, Benjamin Franklin, Alexander Hamilton, John Jay, Thomas Jefferson, Madison, and George Washington. Based on the critical and substantive roles they played in the formation of the country's new government. And then, so there's a 2 groups of thinkers of historians in the United States of America. I think in the West academic circle as well. One is that the United States was based on Christian entity. The other one is that the United States wasn't based on Christianity, but was based on deism, right? And then, but this professor, historian Greg Fraser, argue about that it's neither Christianity nor this, but by a hybrid theistic rationalism. That's his argument. I think his argument is based about the founding fathers pull off the best parts from all thoughts of the world available at that time, and then they see the best parts from the east, best parts from the west, combine them together, makes a new nation. So here comes my book. So my book is going to be released by I think now they postponed to October. At first they said in no, September. Now they said in October. So the book title is China and the Founding of the United States, the Influence of Traditional Chinese Civilization. And the book discusses about discusses about the examples of how U.S. founders were influenced and inspired by Chinese agriculture, architecture, and philosophy. China, then one of the most stable, powerful civilizations in the world, offered unique perspectives on various aspects of society, which were distinct from the founding fathers' European heritage. China provided an alternative set of social and political frameworks which supported the founding fathers' efforts to craft a unique heritage for their young nation. So these founders sought to establish a political identity that was distinct from European aristocratic tradition. That's my argument. So the book was divided into 7 chapters. In the first chapter, talking about ideas from the East, how the founder used Chinese ideas to build a flourishing society in North America. Chapter 2, I talk about technologies, and from China, how the founders borrowed Chinese technology in the effort to build a new society in North America. Chapter 3 talk about plants. agriculture, how the founders make the efforts to transplant plants, various Chinese plants into North America. Chapter 4 talking about Chinese material culture's influence on the early U.S. history. Chapter 5 talk about the trade. How did you open up trade with China influence the development of the United States? Chapter 6 talk about Confucianism in the making of U.S. democracy. And the last chapter talk about the discuss about the legacy of founder's legacy. So when they made the proposal to the publisher, in North America, we all know that publisher want to know the qualification of the authors. So, and I told them I have published dozens of articles on the influence of Chinese civilization on the American founding fathers in academic magazines circulated in China, India, Italy, Japan, Mongolia, and the United States. Also, my works have been referenced by well-known authors worldwide. So the many authors, scholars, and they cite my articles in their publications. Also, my articles have been used as teaching material by several domestic and international universities. Most recently, Education About Asia, this magazine published by Association for Asian Studies, recognized one of my articles as outstanding learning reference. Also, I have delivered lectures in Asia and Europe and on the topic. So, and the publisher found out my qualification. She said, "Oh, okay, that's going to be a qualified author." That's why they accepted my proposal, then decided to publish the book. Here's the cover of my article. So I have the magazines here. You can see this is the magazines, and this paper I mentioned about got the outstanding award, got outstanding reference tools for Asian studies. And this how can I start? How did I start the project as studying the U.S. founders and China? This is back to 20 years ago when I pursued my PhD at University of Arizona. In North America, when you do PhD work, you have to teach a course because that's a kind of scholarship. Then you get tuition paid. You get a little bit of stipend and buy your food and pay your rent, and that's what I did. I got a teaching certain job, a teaching a course. At that time, in the University of Arizona, there's a requirement for every student must take courses about non-Western civilization. Either regardless your major, your science or non-science, you got to take a non-Western civilization. There's a lot of students they took East Asian civilization or Chinese civilization. I teach a course called Chinese civilization to undergraduate students. And then I want to find some teaching materials for my class. And I went to the library. By accident, I saw a volume of a Washington paper on the desk. I picked up, opened up, I go to the index. I found the Chinese flowers, and it's got a kind of a cultural shock. To my knowledge, at that time, I don't know that Chinese elements, Chinese people, Chinese laborers came to North America by the middle of 19th centuries to build a continental railroad, to come to Golden Rush. But I was thinking about Chinese elements in the colonial time, in the colonies. That's why that favor curiosity. I thought, oh God, I gotta find out are there any Chinese elements in colonial North America? And I did the research, found out there are a lot of a lot of Chinese elements in North America, and then I composed a book that like these class notes. That's what's back to 1998. This is the class notes. This class I'm teaching, and the class notes called "Founding Fathers and China." This is just you can see it's $7 a copy sell to my students to take my class, and then start my search. This is the inside the page. This is the 10th page of the I put it here. Let's see, and then that's the contents here. I can tell contents. They're talking at that time. I only written the two fingers. George Washington, China, Thomas Jefferson, and China, and then they put some pictures and see this book. I talk about John Washington, first American white China, Washington and Chinese flowers, Washington and Chinese porcelain. I talk Jefferson and Chinese gardening and architecture, Jefferson and Chinese products, Jefferson and the principle of American foreign policy towards China. That's the sub chapters, and then so this is the article I mentioned about the publishing the education about Asia, U.S. founders and China, the origins of Chinese cultural influence. This is the paper. I have the paper here on the United States. So you see here this is the picture is about the east door of your Supreme Court. This is east door. If you visit the Washington D.C., you see the east door, east entrance of Supreme Court building. You find this picture, and in the middle is Moses. On his left is Confucius. On his right is Solon. Yeah, those fingers got lawgivers. So this is the picture I took in the last summer when I visited Washington D.C. I go to the east door, east entrance of the Supreme Court building. Had this picture taken. So now, not only outside Supreme Court building, but inside the courtroom, you will see Confucius. So from the third finger from the right, that was Confucius. Confucius right here, Confucius, and then in the courtroom you see the 9 chairs, the 9 supreme judge, and when they're sitting here and they do it when they just ahead, we see Confucius and the other lawgivers in the Supreme Court room, the big court room. So now you can tell the Confucius really has remembered by the Americans the device as well, like a main thinkers of our American law system. This is the I talk about the universities using my papers as the teaching materials, and this is the University of South California. This is from graduate class. The graduate course. This is the graduate students to talk about it, how was mobilized, how it might be influenced by my article. This is the graduate student. She is from Cleveland. She lived by the Erie Canal, but she never realized the Erie Canal was influenced by the Chinese canal construction technology. And I'll read about this one. I really enjoyed reading about the U.S. founders and founding fathers and Chinese influence on the architectures, economic policy, and first political thing. Clay. Clay is a professor. Did you plan our lectures based upon this reading? I feel like everything you talked about was mentioned in the first article titled "The U.S. Founders and China." This article that mentioned in the article about Asia. And then, in particular, I didn't realize that our major canals here in the U.S. were based upon Chinese canals. I'm from Cleveland, but I had no idea the Erie Canal was influenced by earlier Chinese canals. I also enjoyed pursuing through the recommended website for classroom. I hope we can use some of these for our own web review sessions at the end of the course. It's a quote. I really enjoyed reading about Confucius and his influence on American history, especially Thomas Jefferson. Ironically, I received the Constitutional Rights Bulletin the same week. Same week, I read this article, and they had a very similar article. I love teaching and incorporating architectures art into my history class. Now, this is he's a middle school teacher, and he also at the same time pursuing her master's degree at at the University of South California. And so you can tell the this is the George Washington University, and here I give 6 universities. They used my papers as a teaching text, including George Washington University, City College of San Francisco, Montana State University, Johns Hopkins University, and Hong Kong University of Science and Technology, and also University of California. To give you 6 examples. Here's the Johns Hopkins University. They use my articles as a teaching materials. And now we can tell this the Benjamin Franklin's printing shop, and here's the magazine called Pennsylvania Gazette. He published it. This the 2 pages I copied from his weekly newspaper, Pennsylvania Gazette, and this is the Benjamin Franklin published chapters of Confucius' work in 1737, 40 years before the United States was founded, because Independence Day, right? This the Monticello, Thomas Jefferson's home. Thomas Jefferson, you can tell the from here you can tell the Chinese agricultural design was incorporated into Thomas Jefferson's own agricultural design. So here you see the Chinese railings, Jefferson's drawing for the Chinese rails at hotels, reveal that he carefully spaced them in accordance with the arches below here. Put Chinese architectural elements here in this is from University of Virginia. Here you can Chinese flowers grow in Mount Vernon. This is the George Washington's home. On the red, that's his George Washington's handwriting. He recorded in detail how he planted Chinese flowers the distance, how far that's from, that's mountain running. And the Chinese porcelains. If you visit the Benjamin Franklin Museum in Philadelphia, you will see this. This is the Chinese bowl. Franklin Franklin used in his lifetime. This is the picture I taken. I visited the museum. I took the picture. And you can see the small television have like a episode broadcasting about how the story about tell the story. Jeff Franklin got his first China bowl. And Franklin wrote in his autobiography that one day he came home for lunch and he found a Chinese bowl on the table. She asked his wife Deborah about, well, how can you get a Chinese bowl here? And his wife Deborah told him, I saw that our neighbors used China bowl, but you are not lower than them. How can you not have a Chinese bowl? And then, and Franklin was to recall that the first time he got Chinese bowl. When he got money, he bought tons of them, a lot of Chinese bowls. And also, in terms of Chinese bowl in the colonial era, I recently just found out. I was thinking about are there only rich people can afford to use a Chinese bowl, and I found that the record in Thomas Jefferson's home. Everybody knows there's a slave called Haley, right? You found the record about the slave family has over 10 pieces of Chinese porcelain. So now we have to think about it, the Chinese world, Chinese porcelain. So in North America, it's not only limited to the wealth of colonists. Even slaves can afford to have Chinese porcelain. That's the new discovery. We need to do more research about, see how popular the Chinese porcelain ware was in North America. But this is something very interesting. So this the idea of the Great Wall of China was introduced by Benjamin Franklin to North America. So when I saw this, well, God, that's very interesting. And I toured the Blue Mountain. Blue Mountain was Franklin mentioned when he was entrusted to defend Philadelphia in French and Indian War, and he led the militia military to build up the force line between Susquehanna River and Delaware River. Built. And then I toured the Blue Mountain. I try to find something. What I found only thing is a well, not well, called Island Well. Now Island Well now in Allentown. So so I hold the map I drew according to Franklin's description about the defense line he built up, and the picture on the right was a Chinese Great Wall. And this is about some years ago. I went to China. I took Franklin's the map of Franklin's defensive line to China. I show to tell a picture about the Franklin's the map. I drew the map. I show here. I dress in Chinese traditional warriors. The uniform, the picture taken. And it's the map I drew about the Franklin's ideas about the Great Wall built between two rivers, Susquehanna River and Delaware River, and it's the front line. And there was force there. When Franklin won the front, is they just connect all the forces together just seems like a wall. And Franklin, in 1760, Franklin told the British Parliament, unless there's a great wall like China, we cannot defend the colonies. So you can tell the Chinese civilizations from material culture to Confucius to Great Wall and all exist in North America. Uh, in, in my book called China and the Founding of the United States, Influence of Traditional Chinese Civilization, I formulated the notion of Franklin's theory of social progress. This is found on in the context that the best direction for human beings is to combine the best of the West with the best of the East. So I drew the diagram, help you understand the theory. So on the first square, top square, you see the Confucius meritocracy. For the East, the social progress was led by the leaders. In Franklin's words, by the wise and great, called virtue, they lead. In the West, that's the reversed. So the West social progress was by ignoring mobs, comments. Ignoring mobs, just Franklin's words, I just used here. So now we see this East tradition from up to bottom. The West tradition was from bottom to the up. So for Franklin, neither East nor West are good for the human being. So we have to combine the two. So Franklin's theory that find out a way to use the two methods at the same time. To combine Confucian with the West social progress tradition. That's Franklin's notion. So specifically, I made this slide so you can further detail about how this series works, how this series influenced the Constitution of the United States of America. So this one, the Franklin theory here, got the East from up to the bottom, Confucians, right here and here, and West from bottom up, the social progress is realized by the masses pushing the elites. This way, and then Franklin in the middle said, combine the East with the West, check the balance system needed to make the combination work. So in order to realize the idea, combining the West with the East, so you need to check the balance. It means the leaders need to be checked. In the meantime, the bottom, the masses also need checked. And the question is how we check the leaders. And another question is that how we check the bottom, how we check the masses. The masses. So now they use the separating power, right? They just must use separating power to check the leaders, right? No branch, three powers, executive, legislative, and superjudge. No person can apply to check each other. How would check the masses? Electoral college. That's why the founders, they didn't design a direct democracy. They didn't do one vote, not like Taiwan, not like the other democratic system societies, and then if I get one more vote, then you, I win, majority win, right? But in the United States of America, the founders didn't do that way. So suppose like Hillary Clinton, Al Gore, they get millions, at least million more votes than the other candidate, but they lost. So why is it lost? Because the devices had to be checked. How to check them? The electoral college. Now you can tell the Franklin's social progress theory functioning very well. Combine everything, right? We just check them, combine them, to work. But why? What time and where Franklin put forward his theory of social progress? It was in 1749. Occasion was that he wrote a letter to George Whitefield. It's called the Great Awakening. Think about it. In the Great Awakening, the Christian ministry came to the North America to talk about Christian. At this time, Benjamin Franklin came out. No, I'm not following that. I just think about follow Confucius. This later said, this you highlighted the thing. That's the whole paragraph talking about combined Eastern social progress tradition with the Western social progress tradition. That whole idea come out. I talk more in my book. Here just give you a basic idea how my framework worked. So this the cartoon I just give you like give you like a simpler impression how the series works. The red rope is Confucius political ideas. The green is a tradition of Western social progress. What Benjamin Franklin do when do combine the two and then come out? Franklin sort of come two as one. So this is just like a easy to understand my argument that you see. And then this is the American educational website. To talk about it in the old days, before Dr. Wang's articles, we just realized that Western democracy, when we talk about democracy, we just talk two things. One is Greek, Roman tradition, and the second is Enlightenment thinkers' ideas, right? The Montesquieu, Locke, Rousseau, Hobbes, talking to them. But now, Dr. Wang from St. John's University makes the case for Confucianism influence on the founding fathers. Now they got three. When you're talking American democratic system, you got to talk about Roman tradition, Enlightenment thinkers, and Confucius ideas. Okay, yeah. And this come out. This is the scholar, or just a well-known scholar. This is the British scholar. She's the president of International Association for the first century studies, Europe. So I got to read. I gotta read what he's. Gotta read what he said. She said, everyone interested in American history. Gotta read this. History must read. Should read Dave Wang remarkable book. It demonstrates that the framers of the American Constitution were inspired not only by British liberal thinkers like John Locke, as is well known, but also by Chinese Confucian ideals, as is little known. Such global exchanges were encouraged by increasing travel in the 18th century, and ideas flow from the east to west, as well as vice versa. Pioneers of the American Republic, like Benjamin Franklin and Thomas Jefferson, wanted to create a new world that differed from old Europe. So they looked elsewhere for inspiration, and they saw Confucius China, its plans, its technologies, and its ideas of responsible government, virtuous citizenship, and promotion by merit. This remarkable book shows how nations make their own histories within a world of circulating ideas and technologies. It's the uh, English British scholar. Now we can this is an American scholar. He's a well-known professor, Michael Clare. He wrote a book, The Great Chinese Art Transfer: How So Much of China's Art Came to America. His book was published in 2016, and he wrote, I quote, "American history courses never breathe a word about the significant influence that Chinese ideas, philosophy, and technologies played in the founding and early development of the United States." Dr. Wang's book marvelously fills the gap in the study of America's early history. He writes about the founding fathers, the admiration for and use of many aspects of Chinese culture. Who of us knew that George Washington, Benjamin Franklin, Thomas Jefferson, Alexander Hamilton, and others were so familiar with and so valued the achievements of Chinese civilization? Dr. Wang's book is original, well written, and very timely at this particular period of history. Oh, this German professor, he's the research professor and director, Obama Institute for Transnational American Studies, Johannes Gutenberg University in Germany. He also was the president of a German American Study Association. He's a well-known professor. I read, I'm going to read what he said. Quote, "In view of the current political climate between China and the United States, Dr. Dave Wang's fascinating study offers an alternative cooperation based on the decisive influence of Chinese sage Confucius on the founding fathers in shaping the moral constitution of the American political system. To read Dr. Wang's illuminating account of this amazing cross-cultural history reaffirms the importance and the value of learning from other civilizations for the benefit of creating a universal understanding. Dr. Wang has unearthed and covered an impressive range of Chinese, European, and American sources to document the adoption of Chinese achievements in the areas of moral, political philosophy, educational goals, agriculture, technology, and nutrition, facilitated by trade relations between China and America since 1784. The impact of his extensive material and thorough research support powerfully Dr. Wang's convincing argument that the Chinese ideas determined the making of the United States as a new nation, and that the recognition might serve as a guideline for contemporary transcultural relations. This is a well-known professor. He's now we got Matt. Matt is the Young Foundation. He gave my book very high evaluation. I appreciated my good words. It's a Dr. Wang has unveiled a forgotten chapter of American history, which showcases how the founders of the world's first republic were inspired and shaped by the best teachings of the world's oldest living civilization. A truly fast coming of a time of tension and ignorance when it is most needed. Yeah, and so we are in the midst of the first global pandemic in more than a century. In this period of darkness, there were shining lights that emerged. All places such as Japan, South Korea, Vietnam, and Taiwan that have combined the tradition of white social progress with the positive moral and social principles of Eastern Confucianism have achieved great success in fighting against the COVID-19 viruses. So you look around, you see not only that, but recently South Korea just admitted by United Nations as a developed country. So you see around China, Japan, developed country already, and now Singapore, developed country, South Korea, now developed country, and Taiwan. See, everything's developed. See, the other part of the world, they not as developed as except Europe, right? So the reason was that for me is that combined to follow Franklin's theory, social progress theory, combined the Confucianism with Western social progress that they introduced the democratic system from the United States and combined Confucius traditional value. That's why they developed so fast. As a matter of fact, when I started my project, one of the questions I asked myself was that in about 200 years of time, such a short period of time, how can United States from a teeny colonies develop into a only superpower in the world? So Americans' power we never seen in human being history. How could that happen? And then I found out, oh God, the founders are smart. Wanted to develop to build a country. They borrowed the best part from other civilization, of course, including Chinese civilization. That's one question I asked her. So in fact, there are those countries like South Korea, Japan, and Taiwan. They are leading the way in all aspects of social development. Singapore has adopted Western-style political system since independence. At the same time, the republic also maintains a strong connection with Confucian tradition. Lee Kuan Yew was the Singapore's founding father and long-term leader. In his second memoir, published in 2000, Lee wrote that, quote, Singapore is a Confucian society which placed the interests of the community above those of individuals. In my book, I talk about how Franklin brought those ideas in colonial era. So I don't want to elaborate too much here in this presentation. He recognized, Lee Kuan Yew recognized clearly that the city-state success and prosperity depends on the strength and influence of Confucian value to keep society orderly and maintain a culture of thrift, hard work, filial piety, and respect for elders and for scholarships and learning. These values make for productive people and have economic progress. History and contemporary social development are constantly demonstrating that the significance of Benjamin Franklin's theory. America's founders incorporated some positive elements from other civilizations. In today's world, no matter your background, education, and career, an understanding of how past societies have drawn strengths from other cultures is a key to humanity's progress in the future. We have reason to believe that the road pointed out by Franklin will be more and more realized by the world. The history of the founders' efforts to apply positive elements from Chinese civilization encourages a deeper understanding of differences. I'm confident that as long as we draw inspiration from the great men of the past, we will overcome all obstacles and build a more beautiful world. In his influential article, the late Professor Samuel Huntington writes that in his thesis of the clash of civilization is to set forth descriptive hypotheses as to what the future might be like. However, if we are to be successful in the future, we must study the past. Readers will find from reading this book, this is my book, that mutual learning is one of the themes of the progress of human civilization. And it's the my book now is not released yet, but how information is out. So now publishers have to in the worldwide how to pick it up. The let the readers to have an opportunity to order to pre-order. At least Amazon, this the Britain booksellers, this the this also British booksellers, but I found catching me eyes is that the booksellers established in the 1792. Wow, it's really impressive, right? These booksellers picked out the book. Also, this the Swiss also put out the book. Also, this the Denmark, and this the Japan, Japan, and it's South Korea, and this is the company that sell textbooks, and student can buy textbooks. It means this book going to be used as a teaching text by university and colleges. And here go this is Canada, from your country, and booksellers pick it up. And this the work kind for the whole world. All the major countries have this one library. At least the Library of Congress. Library of Congress has ordered several copies of this book. So we can tell the Library of Congress the thinking of a book. So they put it like IOC subject, Library Congress subject. The US this book is in the subject of United States civilization, Chinese civilization, 18th century, history, 1783 to 1815, and relation with China, with United States, and Chinese history, Qing Dynasty. All of this book covered all of those subjects. At least the one professor wrote about a unique book that should influence the way Americans see their own history. This the Italian scholar. I just put this here. People can tell how the Western scholars think about the book. Just about, I see it manifest racism, why this the culture sense, all in effective paternalistic narrow subdivisions. Your culture matters, we tolerate its survival, right? It's while the West never questioning its own basis and presume the purity of them. That's never true, right? Professor Wang, your companion book is a great example of disruption of this exhausted single story. I see about it. Without one civilization, it's based on the positive elements from other civilizations. This professor, German professor, said, this look great. The study will hopefully lead to a reassessment of Chinese-American relations. To go to the other way. So now I think I just do a briefly quick presentation about the ideas of the what I covered, why I read such a book, and a brief history about the formation of the book and the idea. So now I open questions. Anyone can ask questions. Do I have time to ask questions?
Yes, most certainly you do. And I've asked people to put their names in the chat box queue, and I'll call upon them in order. So far, we already have Stephen who will be asking a question. But before Stephen, I call on you. The parting words of your excellent presentation, which I'm really grateful that you went through for us today. I was reminded of the former ambassador of China to the United States, Kui Tenkai, who cited Abraham Lincoln in a recent speech where he made a point that Lincoln had always said that the best way to predict the future was to create it. And I love that idea, which really does take us into the best of, again, both the wisdom of both East and West very nicely. So Stephen, it's all yours.
Thanks, Matt. Thank you, Professor Wang, for a wonderful and enlightening lecture. Very much appreciated. My question is in part inspired by a lecture given by Dr. Le a while ago on the concept of Confucius and superior man and the similarities or parallels in some of Platonic thinking. My question kind of relates to your idea of taking the Eastern or Chinese thought of noble top-down governance and finding a way to reconcile or unify it with the best of Western bottom-up thinking and manifest in Franklin. And my question sort of relates also to classical Chinese civilization. Is that concept possibly anticipated in the I Ching and perhaps in the trigrams that deal with heaven and earth as parallels for top-down and bottom-up approaches and the unification thereof?
Yeah, I'm not so sure. What's your question?
Well, in classical Chinese thought, of course, you have the I Ching and the trigrams and the hexagrams, and you can get into the concept of heaven and earth and trying to reconcile them. And I'm just wondering if your thoughts on sort of Ben Franklin and the Chinese Confucian noble top-down superior man sort of approach to governance and civil affairs and statescraft versus the Western bottom-up and improving for the common good, if that has any parallels in classical Chinese thought or is anticipated by that. And then the one thing that came to mind in my mind was the I Ching and some of the concepts of reconciling heaven and earth. Is the discussion today and the challenge of reconciling East and West anticipated or reflected in perhaps some analogous classical Chinese thought?
Yeah, I think I Ching. What I Ching means? I Ching. I didn't know the word I Ching.
It's a classical Chinese. I'm not sure if you call it divination or philosophical approach to describing human affairs, but it's and Dr. Le probably knows more than I do and can talk about it. But
Professor Wang, if I may, Stephen means the I Ching, the book of change.
Oh, yeah. Okay, good. Now I got it. Okay, so there's some notion. Remind me one story. I think in 2018, I was invited to a presentation in a Chinese university, and after my presentation, and one graduate student stood up and raised the question about she said about did the Westerners understood the true meaning of Confucius? You see, when after the question, I think about why this come out of question? What it mean? What does it want to know? No, this is the we have to understand the context, right? So when in terms of cultural mutual influence, cultural borrowings, we cannot think about the Chinese Confucius influence in America in colonial era, right? We think about that, but we cannot put the context in the Asian Chinese context. My point is that the one cultural influence in other country, it cannot be the whole thing. The founders, in other words, the founders of the United States never thought to borrow the whole thing of Confucianism. They never think about it to build a country along Confucius line, right? They want to build a new society. They want to use some elements from Confucianism. The word they can use, just like just like when you go to superstore, you go to supermarket, you go to store to shopping. You don't buy the whole store. You don't buy the things you need. The same idea. When the founders come to North America, they want to be a new country, right? But their own heritage is Western tradition, right? So we cannot say they totally wipe out Western tradition, Western civilization. That's unthinkable, right? They grew up in the Western tradition, but they want to be a new country to find the shopping and see around what available they can use. They found, Confucianism has good ideas. We just use those good ideas. That's it. So the Chinese students, they're thinking about what they think about. They have to study Confucianism for 10 years, and they can learn from Confucius. That's a mentality that's totally different. Right? That's a cultural borrowings. I think as so far today, the Chinese hasn't solved the issue yet. In their mind, they cannot take some good parts from Western civilization. They only whether East or whether East or whether either West. So that's why they got a word of Westernization or something like that. For Westernization, for the founders of the United States, it's not an issue. They never thought that way. They just borrow good parts, the positive parts. That's it. I said the negative parts, let go, right? But Chinese think about it. When we learn from the West, we got to take the whole thing. That's why the Chinese they never get the point. They never get something good from the West. Just that's my own thought. Maybe I could be wrong, but I think that's the way we should look at it. The history, the incorporation, the positive elements from Chinese civilization. That's why in I read my article, in my presentation, I got to emphasize the positive parts. We not expect the founding fathers for the whole thing, for full Confucianism to North America. That's unthinkable, unreasonable. Also, it's unacceptable, right? It cannot accept. I don't think American can accept some of Confucius notions, right?
Yeah.
How can that? That's totally, totally. We have to understand the mentality or the context. That's very important. That's what I think. But I think the I Ching, I don't see in any founders in the works in the papers mention about I Ching. That's why I cannot say anything about I Ching. Yeah, we have built the research on the solid ground. We got to look into the papers. To really decide that we can use that. We cannot use a hypothesis, right? Yeah.
Thank you, Professor.
That's a very good question. Yeah. How many more questions? I'm very enjoyed the questions. Very good.
Thank you.
Yeah. Very good. Yeah.
Yep. So I don't see any other questions in the chat box, but if anybody has a burning question or a thought that they want to get off their chest, now's the time. So feel free.
Just feel free to talk. We discuss. I'm also a learner. I'm just learning. Yeah.
Well, maybe I'll say something.
We got something from Satomi.
Well, when you're saying about we borrow other thoughts and things from different cultures, but like the I Ching, I think the interpreter was a Protestant. He was actually a Christian that interpreted the I Ching. So like I see, even though I'm a Christian, I can read the I Ching and just get so much, receive so much from the wisdom, because I think truth is in a way universal too, and it's in every culture and every religion, and in that way you can identify with different aspects of different culture, because there's something that resonates, that spirit resonates with your own. That's how I feel. But also, Dr. Wang, Professor Wang, I want to just thank you for I love that analogy of the, how the founding fathers got the government from the Chinese top down, and then the electoral college from the bottom up. I mean, that to me is so, good to know those things, that's where the cross-cultural probably is so evident. And then the plants, of course, I could, that's very easy for me to understand, but that was quite a great source of information just to know that, and just be so grateful for China's contribution to our culture. Thank you.
Yeah, that's a very good comment. I don't, even today, we know that the Eastern influence on the Western culture was not a very was not a very big topic. A lot of people, they don't like it, right? So even though back to the founding era, at that time, so the Westerners also they very they did not think about the East Asian tradition. It's like it's something you can talk in the public. Even the founders, to help find some ideas similar from the other Western thinkers, then use that way. And they can even I remember one time, I forgot either John Adams or Thomas Jefferson mentioned about, so we cannot talk the Confucius ideas in the existence of our neighbors. You got to think about it. This is the Western society, right? You cannot think about it. Confucius come here like East Asia, to think about it. We got our tradition. What do we learn from others? A lot of people get ritualists. Just like when I read the Italian scholar talk about it, you think about, oh, we allow your culture existence. That's our attitude. And it doesn't mention you mentioned about influence. You know, that's these kind of ideas still, I should say, very strong in the West, right? Same thing as in Chinese, also something, you know, it's a nationalism in China is very strong. People think about it. We cannot accept the Western ideas, you know, right? Especially now, because the confrontation between China and the West, led by the United States. So that it's really a kind of, but I think that's only temporary, because cultural borrowing, mutual learning, such a historical trend. No one can stop it. The Americans just developed it that way, learn positive elements from Chinese culture. That's the history. We can use history as a teacher, as a guide. The future also should be that way. Regardless of how people think about the other cultures, and always mutual learning, always like that. And I believe Franklin's theory of social progress, combining the best part from East and best part from the West. That's the solution for the human being in the better future. That I think. Thank you.
One question though. Do you think that China today, modern China, has that same kind of concept? Like are they still very rooted in the Confucian, meritocracy?
No, I don't think so. I think that's a very complicated story, and I think the Chinese tried to carry to hunt down some Confucius ideas because they think it's a good Confucius idea, but they don't know what a good, what a bad. You know, they don't have the wisdom to think about what's a good tradition we should carry down. For instance, Confucius talk about the sovereignty at the people, right? People more important. People more important than the rulers. You think they're going to do that? They're going to trust people? How can they do that? So I think the founding fathers, they're great because they did something great. They found a way to realize the idea of sovereignty rights at the people. They designed democratic system that people have a say. This is realize the idea of Confucius. But because the limitation of history, Confucius designed and the two ways to keep the sovereignty of the people. One is that people had the right to rebellion, right? We can kill the murderer. We can kill the emperor, kill the ruler. If the ruler is like a tyrant, is not good for the people. People have a way to kill him. That's one way. The other way is morality. You got to be cultivate your morals, but both of them don't work. One is work is with bloody fightings. You see the world having the French Revolution. The emperor was killed and the king was killed, and Chinese the cycle, farmers rebellion, one rebellion. It's justified by Confucius. Rulers, the people had the right. But when history turned the period, when the founding fathers were brought to the stage of creating history, they made revolutionary Confucius idea. They found the frame, give it away to democracy, people's involvement, and people realize sovereignty rests in the people, and then people have to vote for the election, right? Those ideas come out of here. So when we think about it, when people have ideas, they think about, oh, Confucius idea is all in China. No, that's totally wrong. I would say the real Confucius political idea are realized by the American founders. Think about it, the frame, think about the build up the American governmental system, think about the Constitution, think about the Confucius political ideas. You got to think about where in the world today Confucius idea sovereignty rest in the people are realized in a peaceful way, in a correct way, right? But we cannot blame Confucius. Confucius, you cannot really. But that period of history is beyond their capability. They cannot do things like this, right? But the founding father come here, they saw all the torrent, saw the bloody fighting. They think about we got to stop this. That the right constitution, give people the right to vote, to check the leaders. Also they check the balance, check the power, political power, to separate the power, right, to separation of powers, and the electoral college, electoral college. The two ways. One way is checking the leaders, the other way is checking the people. All people will check, make the balance. That's great. That's great. And I would say that so they're going to be created real Confucius political idea just really truly realized in the United States of America. That's the human beings, one of great success of human beings. So the Chinese, I don't think they're not there yet. They borrowed the Marxism, and then I don't know what I really don't understand what is the Marxism, because that's not my subject. Yeah, and I think that's I really don't understand. I don't look into much about the modern history. I focus on the 17th century, 18th centuries. You know, I've read it, but I just think about it. How our human being borrowed from each other, make the our society better and the world better. Yeah, that's my point. I really. I also I have to admit I don't know much about the Chinese modern, especially Chinese modern history. A lot of things I don't understand. You know, from my point of view. Yeah. Yeah. Any questions? Oh God, I like it very much.
We have another or a thought / question comment from Gerald.
Okay.
Oh, and Professor Wang, you can, if you're able to, close your screen share or end the screen share by going to the top of your screen, and if you move your mouse to the top of your Zoom screen, it should say stop screen share at the top middle.
Actually,
if you don't see that, that's okay. All right, so Jerry, what's your thought?
Oh, I wanted to thank Professor Wang very much. That was a wonderful presentation. Especially the part on the Erie Canal. I never knew about that. I've got to do more reading on that too. But some of the reading I've done about history in the United States and China, particularly with Lewis and Clark and the Lewis and Clark expedition back in 1804. And I know they were trying to find a way to get from the east to the Pacific coast. And one of the reasons they wanted was so they could have direct trade with China. Because before that, for most people, if you wanted to trade with China, you had to go through London. You traded with London and the British traded with the Chinese. And they wanted to get rid of that and have a direct way to trade with China. And finding a way to the West Coast was one of the ways they were trying to do it. And that it reminded me, the way I looked at the founding fathers was that the same way, though they didn't know a lot about China. They knew a bit. They didn't know a lot about Confucianism. They did know a bit. But the one thing they did know is they wanted to know more. They wanted to know more about China, and they wanted to know more about Confucius. And I think that was, you could see that with Benjamin Franklin. He wanted to know more about everything. But I wanted to thank you because it's the same for me. I don't know a lot about Confucius and China, but I do want to know more. And I think you've given me and a lot of other people that way to learn more. So I just wanted to thank you, Professor.
You're welcome. I think that that's very good. As for the trade, I think the reason was not because it cannot do direct trade from China across the ocean. I think the China opened up the content, and as the port, foreigners can trade in China in the Qing dynasty. And however, the trade in this part of the world was monopolized by Eastern Indian Company. Eastern Indian Company that's halfly owned by the British Empire, the imperial government, right? So the part of the reason this country was founded was that built in East Indian Company played a role, right? The country and lose money, they try to monopolize, and they trade out, they go to Britain, they got tea. You cannot smuggle in tea into North America because when the Britons, they came to new land, they carried the habit drinking tea with them. And the tea was a big issue. Everybody drinking tea, everyone drinking tea, and then tea club, all the places, and then suddenly suddenly the department town, nobody can smuggle tea unless Eastern Indian Company. That's company issue, creates the taxes, everything, and then the revolution started. Yeah, that's the whole story. I think the trade monopolized from the British government, and that's why in the 1784. As soon as the Paris Treaty signed, the founding fathers supported the trade with China, right? They started trade with China, and then everyone involved, all of the founders involved. And Robert Morris used his own money supported the ship because at that time, basically central government that doesn't work. They don't have power to tax the states. There's a lot of things going on, and how you rely on the individual money. And George Washington selected they call it supercargo. Actually, it's a commercial manager, one of his military staff. Recommended Samuel Shaw. Samuel Shaw then as a supercargo, they wrote good diaries. And there's like books, and now you can everything available. You check Library of Congress. They put the letters, the journals outside about how the China trade started, and they got the money. When the ship went to China, a lot of investors just run away because they don't know they're going to lose or not. They're just so far distance. And the ship came back from China, make 44% profits, 25% profit, and then everybody involved, China favor, and then people from the northeast part, and then started shaping go to China, and then the trade started, and to get the money and pay the debt. And at that time, the people worry about the Revolutionary War, the funding issue, because there's a lot of money borrowed from individual. After the revolution, after the victory, you got to pay the debt. And some worry about never pay the debt. How can such big number? And after they start China trade, they pay the debt quickly. And the Chinese trade with China really saved the new republic. Because Britain got a circle. Because Americans no trade. Everyone cannot trade. You trade with nobody. The idea is that they try to force the independent states return to a motherland, return to the mother country one by one. Think about it. Without China trade, without success, without money coming in, and United States of America maybe died in the early page, just like Canada, right? The royal families run to Canada, the whole country like Canada now. Maybe, yeah, okay. That's very good. We have a very good discussion. Excellent.
It's easy to forget sometimes because we often think of the China of the 19th century and the later century of humiliation and the opium wars and the poverty. And we forget that in the 18th century, that China was the primary economic engine of the world. And without which the U.S. would have not survived its early years economically. So that's a very important thing to keep in mind. And I had forgotten, actually, until you just brought that up.
Man, that's a very good point, because one time I was talking, I make a presentation about China trade in Boston. The one professor came to me, Dr. Wang, I think that China trade, compared with the other trade, is in terms of numbers, is not very impressive. I said, oh, come on, now I thought, wow, how do you think that way? The numbers sometimes important, sometimes not, doesn't. Because at that time, you don't think about how big the United States trade is. Maybe at that time, the total volume of American trade with other countries, maybe just like 1%, less than 1% of maybe 1 or 10,000% of trade with China right now, right? How many trade flow between China and the United States nowadays? We cannot compare numbers, because at that time, the China trade saved the United States of America. At that time, no one wants to trade with you. Britain closed everything. You got to survive. We can't come down. I think at that point of time, that particular history of time, you do think about numbers. You think about who saved your life. Sometimes people give you $10,000, and sometimes you're hungry, give you one bread. Which is more important? Without one bread, you maybe died. So what $10,000 value there, right? Value is. You can think about, sometimes you can think about just what I talk about context. Put your statement or judgment or reasoning in context. If we get a reasonable conclusion. That's very, very interesting. Yeah.
Also, it sort of changes the thinking, and I don't know where this research has been done. Maybe it hasn't been done as fully as it should be. But the calculus of the British Empire in those late days of the 18th century to subdue China and also, I suppose, India, which was also a very large economy of the world, and was also in support. I mean, you had the Mysore's Tipu Sultan, who were in support of the U.S. cause in the 1790s in their battles against the British in the 1780s. So I'm wondering just how much and in what way the British Empire changed their strategy to subdue China and India because of what they represented as bastions of hope, with the U.S. cause having just succeeded recently on the other side of the world. It's a very interesting concept.
Yeah, very interesting. Yeah, very big topic. Yeah.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. That's but it's very interesting. It's worthy to pursue.
Yes.
Yeah, that's very good. Yeah.
So, do we have any other final thoughts or questions before we close out for today?
Matt, I just want to mention a book by John Hobson, The Eastern Origins of Western Civilization. That's the author that tackles with the topic that Professor Wang is presenting to us today. And by the way, thank you, Professor Wang. Very interesting.
Yeah, thank you so much. Yeah, it's my pleasure. Yeah, that's very good. I think the Rising Tide.
Professor Wang, do you know the book by John Hobson, by the way?
What was that?
Professor Wang, do you know the book by John Hobson?
John Hopkins?
John Hobson.
Yeah, John Hobson.
When the book was published?
Eastern Origins of Western Civilization.
That's an old book?
It's new. He's a
yes, quite. Sorry, go Matt.
No, I was gonna. You finish it. I was just gonna say he's a teacher currently at the London School of Economics, and yeah, he recently published this in the last 10 years.
Okay, I'm going to get that book to read. Yeah, John Hopkins, right?
Yes, Hobson.
Hobson. Okay, thank you. Yeah, but I read some books similar to that topic. It's a very old books. Yeah, but it's a good book. Even though with the limitation of historical development, but it got a very good theme. Yeah. I think the Rising Tide Foundation did a very good job in promoting the understanding between Eastern and Western civilization. I think that not only good for the North America, but for the whole world as a whole. We do need the civilizational dialogue to understanding more, learning more. That's very good. Thank you so much for the opportunity to see you guys. Yeah, just keep in touch. That's very good.
Professor Wang, thank you so much. And thank you for sharing your insight, your knowledge, and your research. And the fact that there was a vacuum in our understanding of our past that you have succeeded in filling in a very important way. I really do appreciate this immensely. I will make sure that we have a link to your book. And as soon as it is published, we will put out a press release as well to all of our followers so that people can be notified and they can purchase your book. As well as your website.
Yeah.
So thank you. And for next week, we have a follow-up presentation as we continue to develop this idea further by Dr. Quan Le, who we've heard a little bit of tonight, who will develop a concept around the theme of statecraft in modern China from Sun Yat-sen to the New Silk Road.
Okay.
So that'll be next week. And I hope to see everyone there, same time, 4 p.m. next Sunday. So thank you again, Dr. Wang.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.